Dima, stay out of the... Okay.
Yeah, I went to school, but let me finish that with,
Oh, about the stove, there's more, okay.
with the utilities. So, father was able to buy coal on the market. The problem was transportation. If you could get somebody to transport that coal to your house, and then transfer that coal from the what you can call it, well, the space in the back of the house to carry that to the local in a basement. It was a big problem to lock that place, because if you didn't lock it,
Somebody would take it.
somebody would steal your coal or whatever is in there. So father had to devise a mechanism that controls the door. So you had to know how to open that door without key or door, you know. Key would be of no use because burglar could
Pick the
break
lock.
without key. Back to food. I'm talking about that period of between 30 to 40, because it was, you know, normal life. Mother would get early in the morning, go to the marketplace and buy whatever she could. Things were available. You could buy fish, you could buy chicken, you could buy vegetable at rather high prices. But you still could do it, could buy. Since both parents worked, the family had more money than normal family.
Didn't other women work? I thought all women worked.
What?
I thought a lot of women worked.
Yes, they did, but somehow my mother was getting better pay
Than most women.
than her because she was educated. She knew the language well, so she could type
And tell the uneducated commissar how to write his business letter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Usually the head of the place she worked was a commissar
Some borderline illiterate former peasant.
who was almost illiterate. And when he wrote something, it was illiterate. So my mother typed his stuff, but she corrected his mistakes. And because of that, she was valuable. The bosses there sort of give her all sorts of breaks. Like, for instance, you get better pay when you agree to type certain construction plans. You know, smeta. Smeta is how much it would cost to do that and that and that, you know.
Like a budget sort of thing, yeah.
Like a report. So my mother was able to handle all that. For one thing, she was educated, of course, she didn't have any college, but she had the high school, so to say. And father was engineer. The problem with father was that my father never had a college education.
So how could he be an engineer?
Precisely. So he had to lie.
Oh, that's nice.
My father was quite able to communicate with people. He was made friendly with the local and even local bosses, and somehow managed to provide documents. By the way, I think I showed you his
Workbook, I have it.
workbook.
Mhm. I have it electronically, I scanned it.
It has, you know, the whole report of what he was doing certain years. So if you read that, and you could see, there was also indicated how much he was getting, how much paid he was getting, and you could see that he was growing. You know, he started very low, started as a sort of low, well, relatively low paid because of friends, and then he advanced. So finally he was chief of health administration in town. Health administration was responsible, well, he worked as an engineer, so he was responsible for upkeep of the hospitals, you know, clinics or whatever. If they need reconstruction or if they need some addition, he was responsible for that. So because of that, well, in other words, why? He would come with inspection to a big hospital. And the chief of that hospital would meet him and they would discuss what needs to be given. Of course, all that chiefs of hospitals were interested that their hospital would be repaired or that and that. So there were...
Lots of opportunity for bribes, in other words. Lots of opportunities for gifts.
Well, there was no gift or bribe or anything like that, but they were willing to, you know, do favors. And one thing that we're able to do, to give me, his son, what you could say, order or something, to go to south, to south camps. That was the camps for kids, but they had to pass sort of a recommendation of doctors. And of course, father was able to get that because he was friendly with the doctors. So he would tell me, Nick, tomorrow you go to see Dr. Bronstein or Shapiro. He will check you out. So tomorrow I go there, tell who I was, and soon enough that Dr. Shapiro or whoever comes out and asks me to come to his room where he would sort of examine me. And my father told me that I should act in such a way, which I did. And he would, the doctor would listen at me, say, and then write a resolution that I needed
a nice vacation in the south. Yeah.
Vacation in the south. And that's how I got, for many years, at least a month vacation in camps in the south, you know, Black Sea region. which was a very good deal. First, that there was a good food, you know, 5 times a day we were fed. You know, that was
Your kind of place, Dima.
that was a standard that you know, people were fed 5 times, small portions, but 5 times a day. And I was even getting black caviar. I remember, it was very good. So every year I would go to that camp in the south and stay there for a month. It was really, I remember that very well. Another thing which I should mention, even though you didn't ask me, in every big city there were so-called palaces of pioneers, which meant that there was a building, usually a big building like in Rostov. It was a 5-story high building, especially for kids' activity. So you could go there, and of course you needed some sort of a recommendation from school that you are, you know, good and all that. But you could enroll in some sort of activity, building airplanes or taking care of small animals, or theater. You could act. There were groups for acting. So it was very good. First of all, it sort of took kids from streets. You know, the kids that didn't know what to do with themselves could go to their place and enter one of that activities there. I used that. I went there, I enrolled in an acting a group. Before that, I was in taking care of small animals that they had there, you know, rabbits and things like that.
Guinea pigs?
Guinea pigs. I didn't particularly like that, but I remember for several months I was involved there. But then I was in theater group, which was more to my liking. There were very interesting groups. For instance, there were groups that they could work on a railroad line, railroad, especially for kids. Yeah, older kids, you know, 16 years old or something, were responsible for driving the locomotive or being the, what do you call it?
Conductors?
Well, conductors or something. It was very, although there were some groups that were allowed to use boats, you know, sailboats or something like that for activity.
On the river?
On the river. I probably, even if I wanted, I couldn't qualify because I had to demonstrate my skill of doing that.
So before they could teach you, you had to already know what you were doing?
What do you say?
I said before they would teach you, you had to already know what you were doing?
Yes, sort of like that. Now, this is one activity that I consider very good. That first of all, it kept kids from street and under guidance of, adults, they were doing something useful. Like in theater, they could perform or read something or whatever.
And that was all free?
It was all free. It was not quite free, but under the Soviet system that was free because somebody must pay that. And who paid that were the unions. Like my mother worked as a typist. She belonged to a union of, typists. And that union was issuing that orders to go to South, things like that. So a lot depended on that unions. My mother was more involved in that, but my father could also, my father was responsible for my going to that doctor's.
What did your grandparents do?
Well, my grandmother didn't do anything. She was living there, and grandfather sort of got a girlfriend somewhere outside.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, he was, I don't know, he was 6 years old or something like that, but he still had a girlfriend. And had his own life. So I had very little association with him. My mother, since I wasn't a good student, I needed somebody to, teach me mathematics or something. So the grandfather was educated man.
He was a pharmacist, right?
Huh?
He was a pharmacist.
He was pharmacist. He could do it because he knew more than I. But he wasn't willing to because he thought I was stupid and it was useless to work with me. So because of that, we always had some tension between him and me.
And so grandma didn't have a job at all, or?
No, grandmother didn't have, she was old, of course. She didn't have to work. So she had, I don't remember how.
Did she take care of you at all, or did she do stuff around the house? Or?
She was useful because my mother was, of course, working. She would go to work. And I would go to school. And when I come home from school, I need to be fed or supervised in some way, which was the grandmother's job.
Did you get along with her okay?
Huh?
Did you get along with her okay?
Well, there was no reason why I should have difficulty, because she was a very good woman, very good-hearted, and I was, like many kids, rather arrogant, and sometimes would tell her off something, or something rude. Which I didn't mean, of course, but I did that. So she tolerated that, and the only control over me was that she would tell me, "You don't do that, or I tell your mother."
No, you don't mess with babushka.
Huh?
Said nobody mess with my babushka.
Yes.
She was.
That's right. So when my mother come home, grandmother would tell her what I did wrong, and my mother would take care of that somehow.
I imagine she would.
Of course, I was whipped maybe a couple times by my father. I mean, got real good spanking. But it was maybe, in all that years, it was maybe twice.
What did you do?
What did I do?
Yeah.
I went to movie.
No, God forbid.
Without permission.
Was it a bad movie?
No, it was a good movie, but it was in the evening. So the worst thing was that it was in the evening and I didn't report that I was out in the movie. So maybe 11 o'clock at night I would come home and my mother was very worried about, so she would give me, you know that.
Oh yeah, I'm very familiar with it. Yeah.
Aim. I got that from her many times. That life in the South Caucasian at the Black Sea was very good. I remember that with great pleasure because we had all sorts of activity, playing bowls, playing, Indian and Cossacks games, this sort of thing, which for kids was very, very interesting. And of course it didn't cost much because that, I don't know what you call it, order,
I guess.
to go there for a month, it was paid by the union. So nobody had to pay for that.